Hi, everybody. I've got 12:01 on my clock, so seems like a good a time as any to get started. My name is Jeff Strand. I am the coordinator of government and external affairs at the Tennessee Disability Coalition, and I want to welcome you to the first of two events for Disability Day on the Hill 2021. We have How to Advocate in the Time of COVID, a training session, and then we have our legislative town hall on March 11th. I'd also like to welcome you to my kitchen, and you can potentially hear my dog back here. So I apologize for that, but the time of COVID, right? So we will be taking questions if we have time at the end of the presentation. Attendees can't right now, but at the time they'll be able to use the Q&A button at the bottom of their screen to type in a question or raise their hand to verbally ask a question. Here's our agenda for the day. I'm going to talk a little bit about the coalition's history, our policy, programs, and grant. I'm going to do a quick high-level overview on how a bill becomes a law. Then we're going to talk, our esteemed panelists are going to talk about meeting with legislators virtually, participating in legislative session and committee action, activism on social media, and learning from thought leaders and political pundits. And then hopefully we'll have time for some questions here at the end. The Tennessee Disability Coalition was originally formed as an ad hoc informal group of disability leaders and volunteers in 1989 called the Coalition for Community Services. Primary goal of this group was to ensure access to home and community-based services in the state. As the collection of disability advocates quickly grew, they decided to formalize in 1990 and rename the collaboration the Tennessee Disability Coalition. We also hired in 1990 the wonderful Carol Westlake as the coalition's first executive director, who celebrated, along with the coalition, 30 years at the helm this past summer. The group's first policy battle was in promoting the Family Support Act in 1991, which was drafted and lobbied for by the coalition and eventually passed into law in 1992. Since that first battle and the first battles of the early years of the Tennessee Disability Coalition, we've successfully passed many pieces of legislation. This include the creation of the Family Support Program, the Katie Beckett Program, establishing the Autism Council, instituting self-directed home and community-based services, expanding telehealth, and banning corporal punishment for students with disabilities in Tennessee schools, among many others. And we're working on several more this year. Hope to add to that list ASAP. This past year, the Disability Coalition celebrated its 30th anniversary in enacting our mission to promote the full and equal participation of people with disabilities in all aspects of life. To accomplish our mission, TDC has three primary purposes and functions. First, our public policy team advocates for good policy for persons with disabilities. Second, we sponsor several direct service programs, including the Southeast ADA Network, Family Voices, Brain Links, and Benefits to Work. Finally, the coalition operates a discretionary small grants program that awards funds to projects and nonprofit organizations in order to build capacity within the disability community. We're going to talk very briefly about how a bill becomes a law in Tennessee. One of the most important aspects of enacting the mission of the Disability Coalition is our legislative policy advocacy efforts, which requires an understanding of the basic processes of the General Assembly, like how a bill becomes a law. I'm going to quickly run through the brief overview of that process. So first, a bill is introduced. This means the legislator had an idea, or an organization like the Disability Coalition came to a legislator with an idea to create a policy. For example, my Senator Brenda Gilmore, she's a dog person. She may decide in 2022 that it's very important for the well-being of lawmakers that dogs be allowed to roam freely in the Capitol, which is a fantastic idea. We are fully behind that idea. She'll then write up a bill that creates this policy, names it the Dogs Rules, Cats Drools Act, and possibly goes looking for allies. She might find that other elected officials, like my other representative, Bill Beck, he's also a dog person. And likewise, he believes that dogs should roam freely in the Capitol. He will write up his own bill, and both will introduce their bills by bringing them to the appropriate clerk. Senator Gilmore will bring it to the Senate clerk. Representative Beck bring it to the House clerk. The clerk will give each bill a number, and they are introduced by reading them in their appropriate chamber. If nobody thinks having a discussion about the bill is a bad idea, they'll pass the bill on consideration, which means they'll talk about it later. The clerk then assigns each bill a committee or a small group of legislators who focus on hearing, debating, and modifying bills of a certain subject before they're heard on the House or Senate floor in front of everybody. In this case, the Senate clerk may assign the Dogs Rule Act to the Government Operations Committee, since it has to do with rules about how bills are made. Once the bill has an assignment, the chairperson, who leads the committee, puts it on the calendar to let everybody know to do their dog research before the next committee meeting. Speaking of dogs, when it's the Dogs Rule Act's turn in committee, Senator Gilmore or Representative Beck will introduce their bill by telling everybody what it's about, and then others will ask questions, and then they'll debate the bill. If they all agree the dogs rule and should roam freely about the Capitol, they'll send it on to either another committee, if it's got something else to do with other parts of government, or they'll send it to the House and Senate floor. There, the bill is debated again. If it is on the House or Senate floor and being heard by everybody, and everybody still agrees the dogs rule, it's passed on what's called third consideration. The bill is then engrossed, which means that the clerk rewrites the whole thing with any changes that were made in committee or on the Senate or House floor, and make sure there's no typos and stuff. If Senator Gilmore and Representative Beck added any amendments to change the bill in their respective chambers or in committee, the bill is sent to be heard again by the other committee or the other chamber with those changes. If everybody still agrees, the two companion bills are merged together to become one bill, and that's called reconciliation. That only happens if there was a change to the bill. The final bill is then typed up on fancy paper. Any existing typos are fixed again. The speakers of the House and Senate sign the fancy paper bill, and it's sent to the governor to sign. After the governor signs, it is given a public chapter number and added into the Tennessee Code. The Dogs Rule, Cats Rule Act is then officially part of Tennessee law and is now called by its number in the code. And that, very briefly, is how a bill about dogs roaming in the Capitol might pass through the legislature and be signed into law. Now, it is my absolute great pleasure to introduce Jason Rogers. Jason is a seasoned advocate who has participated in Disability Day on the Hill for the past several years. Through advocacy on the Hill, he's formed good relationships with his state representatives. In 2017, Jason starred in our short video demonstrating how to have a successful meeting with your state legislator, which is still featured on the Tennessee Disability Coalition website today. He's a proud 2019 graduate of the Lipscomb University IDEAL program. He loves water skiing, cycling, and snow skiing. His favorite food, like mine, is Mexican. And we're so glad to have you with us today to share your experience as a self-advocate. Thank you for joining us, Jason.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Jason Rogers. Today, I'm going to share with you some tips for meeting with your legislators in a virtual environment. It's important to know about your legislator so you can share with him or her. Senator Washington lives in Chattanooga, where I live. I know Bo Washington is a physical therapist like my mom. I know Bo always wears a bow tie, so I wear a bow tie when I meet with him. Bo sits on the Health and Welfare Committee, which is responsible for both rehab. He also is the chairperson of a finance committee, which means that he decides how to spend the state's money. He is someone I want to talk to about issues that are important to me. Be prepared. You will not have time to discuss everything that is important to you. So focus on one issue or a single bill. My main issue at this time is transportation. But in the past, I have spoken to my legislators about housing and employment as well. share your personal story. I like talking to people and I want to get to know them, but I also want them to know something about me. Sharing something about myself helps relax me. It makes it easier to express my points. In my case, I would tell them I live independently, that I have a job, but that I need transportation to get to work, church, meetings, and social activities. So here is an example of meeting with your legislator on Zoom.
Hey, Jeff, we can't hear the video. Can you turn up your volume?
How's that?
We still can't hear it.
Uh-oh. Sorry, Jason. I will get this fixed for you.
Can you take the headphones out? That might be it.
I'm living independently.
And turn
Better?
up the volume.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, so now we can hear. Let's start the video over. Thanks for everyone's patience on the call, and thanks, Jeff.
Yep. Sorry about that, guys.
Well, tell me what you're up to these days.
I'm living independently.
Oh, wow. Okay. Where are you living? In Chattanooga?
Yeah, I'm living in Chattanooga.
Are you working?
I work at Chattanooga Christian School.
That's awesome.
I would like to speak with you about transportation for disabled persons.
The transportation issue is not just limited to folks who have disabilities. Transportation is a real issue for low-income individuals and a lot of different folks. It's just a real challenge. I'm not going to be sugarcoated. It's a challenge because of particularly in the rural areas and the lack of population in those areas.
Could you say a few words about how meeting legislators on Zoom is different and offer any tips you might have?
Well, for me, I mean, I think this is a great platform. Zooming allows us to interact with people, actually more people at a single time than maybe under normal conditions. Obviously, there's limited physical exposure now, so emailing's become even more important than it was. I'm still a huge fan in my office of people who take the time to write a letter. The only thing that replaces a personal letter for me is the individual. Probably if I could give you a gem of wisdom, it would be that stories move people, facts and data don't. People are impacted by what they learn about other people, not by X amount of people did X amount of things. So like Jason, being able to tell your story will go a lot further than just facts and data.
Thank you.
Well, Jason, actually, I should be saying thank you to you because you're taking time out of your busy work day, your busy day, to engage in the political as well as government process. And we need more citizens like you that are willing to take time. You know, there is one resource that we cannot replace, and that is time. So anytime that a person gives of their time, they are giving away their most precious resource. So the fact that you would do that and speak on behalf of of individuals in the disability community is a real compliment to you. You asked me earlier about, advocacy and what suggestions I would have for that. And you're doing the most important thing that you can do. Speaking to individual legislators that represent the area where you live is the most effective way of affecting change. And being able to tell your story, which you're very good at, being able to tell your story is a really effective way of relating to legislators. And at the end of the day, legislators represent the communities that elect them. Not only do they represent them by the way they vote, but they represent them by who they are, how they behave. And so having individuals like you speak to the elected officials from your particular area makes a...
I'm sorry. Oh, what happened?
That's okay. We can pick up on the next slide.
Okay.
Hit it, Jason.
So what's different about meeting virtually? First, you need to practice using Zoom or other technology. Do a practice run with a family member, or caretaker. Be familiar with remote and video buttons. Be sure your Wi-Fi can support the technology. Be on time. Set up a quiet space with no distractions, no pets, no TV. Turn your phone on silent. Do not eat and look into the camera. So, what's the same meeting virtually? Dress appropriately. For women, that may be a nice sweater, sash, or skirt. For men, a shirt and a tie. Be polite. Use good manners. Arrive on time. Be nice. Introduce yourself. Tell them your name, that you are from their district, and the issue you want to discuss today. Remember, this is a conversation between two people. So both people need to listen and share their ideas. If the two of you disagree, be polite and respectful. At the end of your meeting, be sure to thank them for their time. Follow up with an email or a handwritten note. I know Senator Watson likes real letters. You may want to take a screenshot during your meeting and send that picture to them along with the thank you note. Together, we can make a difference. Each time you do this, it gets easier. Have someone you trust with you for the first time. Thank you for listening today.
Thank you so much, Jason. What a great presentation. I hope everyone on the call feels more comfortable with scheduling their meeting virtually with their legislator this year. Today is the last day for the coalition to help you schedule your meeting, but we are happy to call our main number 615-383-9442 later today. We'll help you get your meeting scheduled. All right, so I have the honor of introducing our next speaker. Just hold on 1 minute. I'm going to make sure we get video started. Welcome, Amanda. Let me share my screen. Amanda is a multi-talented young lady. She loves to cook, particularly Mexican food. She loves music, as she puts it, a little bit pop, a little bit Christian, a little bit country. And one of her favorite singers is Shania Twain, who she has met, and guess what, is the same height. Another thing she has in common with Shania, Amanda has recorded a CD with her musical group in college, The Miracles. She's also an accomplished bocce player and has taken first place with her Special Olympics team in recent years. We are honored to have you with us today, Amanda. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Amanda. I am 39 years old and I have Down syndrome. I have lived in Chattanooga and worked part-time at System Children Institute for the past 14 years. I also go to Truesdale School in Cleveland, Tennessee. I work with children with intellectual and physical disability and go to school with friends who have intellectual disability. When my sister left to go to college, I told my parents I like to go away to school too. We searched for a place and found the Doer Center in Mississippi. I got a scholarship from my church to help with the cost. I went there for 4 years. I learned how to live independently and work on campus at Federal Express. It was a great experience. It is important for everyone to be able to get a good education to be what they wanted to be. I went to public school from kindergarten to when I graduated, and I got a good education from all of my teachers. But we always need to improve education, and that's why we should let our lawmakers know what is needed. They are the one who makes the important decision for our state. We want them to make education better for people with disability. We want them to support us by providing services that help us. Now, Sarah is going to show you how you watch the lawmakers make the decision for our education.
Thank you, Amanda. I love hearing about your education journey and why you care about education for everyone. So, how can you participate in education issues as they unfold at the state legislature this year? Well, the legislators meet in committees to talk about specific issues. So because you care about education, you'll want to pay attention to the education committees. And the way you do that is by going to their website. Our state legislature is online at capital.tn.gov. You can follow the issues that matter to you by following those legislative committees. So at the top of the image on my screen, I have the word committees, the tab at the top of the page circled in purple. That's what you'll click on. And remember when Jeff was talking about how a bill becomes a law, it has to pass between both chambers, the House and the Senate. There's a House and a Senate committee for pretty much each issue. So there's an education committee in both chambers, a health and welfare committee in both chambers. Today, we're going to look at the Senate Education Committee because that's Amanda's passion. So from the Senate Committee's page, you're going to click on Education, and here's the committee page. So first off, you see the committee members. These are the legislators who meet to talk about education issues. And there in the middle are the committee officers. These are the legislators who've been chosen to lead this committee. You can reach out to any one of these folks to talk about the education issues that matter to you. To see what they're talking about this week, in the upper left-hand corner of the committee page, I have a little screenshot on my screen. There's a button, the current committee calendar. And if you click that button, you will see the list of the bills that they plan to talk about this week. And remember, like Jeff was talking about, the bills are the piece of policy that they're working to make into a law. So you'll click on the bill number to learn a little bit more about this piece of legislation they want to make into law. And here on the bill page, you can see the bill sponsors. Those are the legislators who are leading the charge on this piece of legislation. You can see the text, so the actual language for the bill. And you can see the steps that the bill has taken so far toward becoming a law there on the right under bill history. So this one's a good example. Amanda was talking about getting a scholarship to go to school earlier, and this is an actual bill that the Education Committee is considering that has to do with scholarships. So Amanda, what did getting a scholarship mean to you?
It means to help with the cost of our school, and it also helps to get into the college.
Yeah. So on first glance, this bill looks like it would increase the amount of money for the middle college scholarship. What do you think about that?
It is important for everyone to get involved with our state government because what they do affect those of us with disability.
Yes, absolutely. So one way to do that is, like we're showing, to get involved and learn about the bills that the committee is considering. So this is a page that shows a bill under consideration. I'm going to take us back to the main committee page because there's more you can do from there. So another thing you can do is in the upper left-hand corner, you can learn when the committee is meeting next by clicking on Current Weekly Schedule. And here we go. We can see that the Senate Education Committee will be meeting next Wednesday at 3 o'clock Central Time because they meet in Nashville, the capital. Also from that main committee page, you can watch them meet live. So from that main committee page, next Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you can click video, and then you can click in progress, and a new window will pop up with the live stream video of the committee meeting. So here's an image of Senator Brian Kelsey, who's the chair of that committee, speaking about a bill. The cool thing about this this live stream video is there on the bottom, it will show the current item they're talking about, the bill number. And on the right, it has a little view of the committee calendar, the bills that they're going to be talking about today. Remember, we saw that earlier from the main committee page too. So, all right, we talked a little bit about how you can engage with committee work at the state legislature this year. A couple things you can do from that main committee page on their website. You can see a list of the committee members, so who's meeting to talk about this issue. For this example, the education issues. You can see a current committee calendar, which is the bills they'll be talking about in their meeting this week. You can see their current weekly schedule, when they'll be meeting, and you can watch video. So you can watch them meet live. Or if you miss out and it's too late, you can watch a recording of their meeting from that video page. Pretty cool. So what do you think, Amanda? It is pretty easy to watch committee hearings.
Yes, and
Would you encourage our audience members to watch the committees that they care about?
yes, to watch the committees to see what they're talking about and do our teamwork together and hope that they will see with help with the people who has the disabilities.
Yes. So Amanda and I were talking earlier, and we think that policymaking and bocce are very similar in that they're both team sports. So it takes our legislature and it takes the community to help pass good laws. And Amanda, what does it take to be number one?
Teamwork, and always it's teamwork, and always support our friends who help us with the team and do it as together.
Yeah. So even though you've already graduated from school, you would still support legislation to create scholarships for other students.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's the other thing we were talking about that you have to do to be number one? How often do you have to practice?
Every day.
Right. So for committees, they will be meeting at the state legislature pretty much every week through the month of March. So there's lots of opportunities to practice getting involved, right?
Yes.
Anything else you want to share with our audience?
Just teamwork and be supportive and just to do your teamwork with everybody.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Amanda. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. So we will transition to our next speaker today. I'm going to turn on her video, Miss China Crockett.
Okay. All right, there you go. Thank you. All right.
Hi, China.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for joining us today. I have the honor of introducing you for our audience. China is a 2019 graduate from Central High School in Chattanooga. She likes working with kids. She is a traumatic brain injury survivor, and she has a passion for music. She particularly enjoys church music and Beyonce. In fact, China has even sung Beyonce's song, If I Were a Boy, for a talent show recently. She also loves spending time with her dog brothers, Mr. T and Midnight. And China, which one of your dog brothers is more cuddly?
I'm going to say Mr. T is the cuddliest one. Midnight, on the other hand, is not.
Okay. Anything else you think that we should tell the audience about you to get started?
We can go ahead and get started.
All right. So we've learned a couple ways to advocate so far today that work even in the pandemic, right? Jason talked with us about how to meet with our legislators virtually, and Amanda talked with us about how to participate in committees. And today, China is going to help us talk about activism on social media. So why does it work? It works because everybody's using social media. Around 7 in 10 Americans are on social media and use it to connect with one another. This absolutely includes our Tennessee policymakers. What do you think about that, China?
I think it's great.
And how do you use social media?
I talk to my friends on social media. I talk to Anna Brooke. She's my best friend from school.
And you use Facebook?
Yes.
And you share photos?
Well, all the time.
Yeah. So we can use Facebook and Twitter and Instagram to connect with our friends, but we can also use it for advocacy. Couple things we can do. We can spread awareness by sharing content from disability thought leaders. We can stay alert and pay attention to groups that will share information about policy changes. We can sign online petitions. We can take action on disability issues. So, China, can you give us an example of an issue that matters to you?
Well, my dogs matter to me.
Yes, of course.
They're my brothers.
I appreciate that. So you'll be watching for policy that has to do with animal rights for sure. And what about employment? I seem to remember that you were on the news a couple nights ago talking about how important it is that there is good opportunities for jobs for people with disabilities.
Yes.
So employment something you care about too?
Yes.
Yes. And thank you. Um, Another example of a way that you can advocate on social media is to share your experiences. And we have a great example from China on this we're going to go to in a minute. But just want to emphasize that when you share your experience, tag your legislator and tag the coalition, because when you tag us, we'll see and we'll be able to learn from what you've posted. So here's China's example. China, can you share with us what you were doing in this video?
I was getting my COVID shots. I was so happy
Yeah. And why is that important?
because it keeps you safe, keeps you healthy.
Yes, perfect. And what is something that someone who saw your post could learn from it?
Wear your mask.
Yes. And China's post is good because she's sharing an experience. It's short, it's clear, it's eye-catching. She shared a video. Also, she used the hashtag short and to the point COVID, hashtag short and to the point disability, and she tagged the Department of Health and the coalition. So we could see and share this post too. Great job, China. This post has power. Next, we're going to talk about hashtags. Including hashtags in your post means that you are taking part in a conversation on social media. It expands your reach. So someone who doesn't normally follow you, but is interested in the hashtag you used will see your post. So here's a fun example. China, if you saw the hashtag Beyonce Forever, what would you think about it?
Awesome.
Yeah, right. Because you care about Beyonce. Exactly. So we at the coalition have a couple hashtags we love too. We love hashtag disability rights because it means that what this person's posting about is related to rights for everyone. And China, you were talking about job opportunities earlier. So for example, the post that you did that shared that video of you talking on the local news about job opportunities for people with disabilities, you could use the hashtag disability rights.
That is correct.
Excellent. So some best practices with hashtags. Don't use spaces or punctuation or symbols. Don't use too many words all bunched together. Try and stay short and to the point. Limit the number of hashtags you use on one post. And if you want folks who don't follow you to see it, make sure that your post is public. China, what hashtag do you think is better? Hashtag disability rights or hashtag disability rights are important and should be everywhere?
Hashtag disability rights are important.
Okay, that's another good one. We encourage staying short and to the point, but disability rights are important could work. So next we have some examples of leaders in state government to follow. Audience members, don't feel like you have to memorize this. The coalition put together a great toolkit. It is available on our website, and if you registered before February 4th, you'll get it in the mail. And we list all of these state leaders to follow in that toolkit. Just a quick overview, we recommend following Governor Bill Lee, Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally, Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton, and not just legislators, but policymakers are important to follow too. So there are 23 departments of state government who report to Bill Lee. And much like legislative committees, they each focus on an issue area. So China cares about employment. So she might follow Commissioner Jeff McCord of Labor and Workforce Development. China, what are the things that you care about?
I care about my family, friends.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've already talked about you care about your family and friends staying healthy and getting the COVID vaccine. So you might also want to follow the Department of Health because that's where news about the COVID vaccine is coming out. What do you think?
Good.
Cool. All right. So the coalition has also created a couple templates that are easy to use and get started. And oh, I think we just lost video from our ASL interpreter. 1 second. You're back. Thanks, Lana. All right, so the coalition has created a couple templates to use to help you get started posting on social media and using your voice to advocate. These are real simple and on our website, and thankfully China has helped us create an example. Can you tell us about this post, China? So I see your name. I see that you live in East Tennessee. And what did you say about why you go further? Why do you advocate?
For your friends.
Yeah, exactly. And this was a great post. So you talked about why you advocate. You tagged us, the Disability Coalition. You tagged your state representative, Mike Carter, and he saw it. And I believe he liked it. And you hashtag the COVID vaccine. So that helps tell folks you care about that. And look at that. It has 19 shares. What do you think about that?
I think that's great.
And what happens when someone shares your post?
I feel happy.
And so on Facebook, someone shares your post, and does that mean it's on their page?
Yes.
And who else can see it then?
Anna Brooke can see it.
Yeah. And so if you post on your page, your friends can see your post. And if someone shares your post, then all their friends can see that content too. So you expand your reach. It's pretty powerful.
It is powerful.
Yes. All right. So to sum it up, ways that you can use social media to advocate. You can listen, you can learn from disability advocates like China who are posting about what they care about on socials. You can like, which tells the author that their content is important and they should post more stuff like that. and you can share, which shares the good information you found on social media with your followers. So for example, China, if your representative Mike Carter posted about it being important to work for creating better job opportunities for people with disabilities, do you think you would share that post?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's something you care about too.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Is there anything else you want to share with the audience today?
Wear your mask.
Yes. Thank you, China. I really appreciate you speaking with us. I learned a lot from it. I'm sure others did too. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to my colleague, Tom Jedlowski, to take us into our next topic area.
All right. Can I share my screen now?
Please do.
All right. I think Jeff has to stop sharing. All right, there we go. All right. Everybody hear me okay? See me and all that?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, so we're gonna be talking a little bit about learning from thought leaders and political pundits, and we'll talk about those terms and what they mean in a minute. But I wanted to introduce this wonderful individual who is on the screen and is going to be helping me kind of put some first-person perspective on some of the things that we are talking about. Her name is Courtney Johnson. She is a 24-year-old autistic adult with multiple disabilities who lives over in the East Tennessee in Johnson City. She's a fierce disability advocate and founded her university's first student-led social and advocacy-based organization dedicated to students with intellectual, developmental, and cognitive challenges. She served as a family advocate for IEP meetings, presented at a ton of conferences and university class lectures. She's attended some autistic self-advocacy networking and through ACI's advocacy program in Washington, D.C., and has been the Tennessee site coordinator for their Disability Day of Mourning 4 years in a row now. So she writes on her website and helps advise families on a variety of topics, and is currently a participant in the Tennessee Council on Developmental Disabilities Partners in Policy programming. Just a heads up, Courtney will be using her AAC. It's a program that helps her with her speech. So just a heads up there, I can actually attest, despite how she's going to sound this afternoon, that she is not in fact a robot. She is a very real person, and we are absolutely thrilled to have her. Courtney, you want to say a quick hi?
Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney. It's an honor to be with you all today. This is so exciting. Advocacy is something very personal to me, and I'm thrilled to help be a part of this.
Thank you, Courtney. So we're going to be talking about thought leaders and political pundits. What is a thought leader? It's an individual organization that's recognized as an authority in a specialized field or whose expertise is thought. An easy way to think of a thought leader is sometimes it's an expert, sometimes it's a legislator or a member of the media. What is a political pundit? It's another term for a person who offers, sort of to mass media or to news people their opinion on, commentary or political analysis, that kind of stuff. In other words, another fancy term for an expert or somebody who is very, very close to this information and lives and breathes it. For the purposes of our chat today, I think there's probably three sort of influencing pundits, influencer type of folks that we're going to talk about. The first one is media, your state government reporters and opinion editors, disability advocates, both the organizations and individuals, as well as hashtag campaigns. I know Sarah and China did a great job talking about hashtags, but you can create them and there's some great ones to follow. We're gonna be talking about some of the great ones to follow. All right, so media and our state legislative reporters. So these are the folks that, when you think of, the Tennessean and big papers that have a statewide reach, these are the folks who cover that. They are the reporters that are there. What are they doing? So they are writing on these sometimes complex policy issues and helping us as the reader better understand what's happening at the state level. They also help raise awareness of the actual, people who are impacted by these complex policy issues by helping folks share their stories with the reporter, or, using an individual impacted by that policy as a vehicle to help tell the impacts of that policy. And they keep us up to date on what's happening, overall. A couple weeks ago when we got that big snow, they were closed for the week. And the first I heard about it was from the reporters that cover that. So who are some of the large players that are covering the state capitol or state house? They are at the Tennessean, primarily it's Natalie Allison. With the Associated Press, it's Kimberly Crucy. The Tennessee Journal, it's a gentleman named Eric Schlesig. And for the Tennessee Lookout, it is Sam Stockard. So these are folks with a sort of, again, a statewide readership, but that are covering all the things that are happening at the state level of government. Now, on the other side of that is we have some more local state house reporters. So they're covering the goings on at the state legislature, but are typically from a local paper, such as the Chattanooga Times Free Press, or someone where the readership is more in a localized area. So we call them local state house reporters. So what are they helping us understand? A lot like the state folks, they're the state reporters, they're helping us understand how a state policy will impact us on a local level. So sometimes we'll see legislation that comes through that perhaps affects one city more than another. The local reporters are going to be the ones that are going to help us understand that complex policy. They often will reach out and ask some of their followers on social media if they're interested in sharing their story. Sometimes you'll see reporters say, "Hey, I'm doing a project, or I'm doing a story about bocce ball." We'll say, and we'll say that Amanda follows this reporter on social media, and he's got a story about bocce ball, and she says, "Hey, I know about bocce ball." And before you know it, she's the subject in a story to help explain a piece of legislation or something else moving through the assembly. And they also tend to cover local representatives more closely. So when you think of, I guess we'll pick on Bo Watson, who was chatting earlier. So Bo is based in Chattanooga. So Chattanooga Times Free Press is going to pay a little more attention to Bo because he is their local Senate representative. So who are the bigger folks to follow, who are sort of the local state house reporters? Not all local papers have a presence or a reporter who's solely dedicated to that. Some do, some don't. But right now that seems to be Andy Sher at the Chattanooga Times Free Press, a gentleman named Ian Round with Daily Memphin. At the Nashville Post, it tends to be Stephen Elliott. And then at, for instance, at News Channel 11, in Johnson City, your Sleater Teague, helping to cover some of that stuff at the local level and for their readers and viewers. Now, I wanted to also talk about this really important part of advocacy that I really think Courtney has so much great experience on, but I wanted to briefly sort of explain what an op-ed is, or an opinion piece. These are sort of some people call them a letter to the editor, or where it's truly a community opportunity to share thoughts on impact, on stories that impact you. Basically, it's short for opinions and editorial page. So it's a written piece published in a newspaper, usually not by someone affiliated with the outlet. So it's not by one of the reporters or someone on staff. In other words, it's by us. It's by, readers, viewers, advocates, and, just regular folks like us who get a chance to have a voice in a larger way. And it was funny because I was actually talking to Miss Courtney about this the other day, and she has actually had quite a bit of experience with that. And I would love for her to kind of share her story about that.
Yes, I wrote two. One was for the Stop the Shock campaign, but the one that was the most impactful for me was the one I wrote for the Disability Day of Mourning and the issue of filicide against people with disabilities. That's when people with disabilities are killed by their families or caregivers. I wrote especially about how people often see our lives as less worth living, and how that everyday stigma contributes to violence against people with disabilities. I was worried about sharing it, because it's not exactly something you expect people to want to read over their morning coffee. Still, I took a chance. I wrote the piece, emailed it to the Tennessean, and they published without hesitation. They generally ask you for a headshot, which is usually a picture of you from the waist up, with as little background as possible. They also may edit it a little bit, but in my experience, they've been very respectful regarding the content and the language I prefer. Don't be intimidated by the idea of op-eds. Journalists really want to hear your story, and your story is worth telling.
Absolutely. It is 100% worth telling. And we're going to allude to sort of the editorial side of that as well with another speaker that we're going to have. But they really are, they're well read. And, you know, people I think like to read the opinions of their neighbors, because that's effectively who's doing the talking or who's doing the writing on those pages. It's your, you know, your fellow Johnson City residents, your fellow Knoxvillians, your fellow Memphians. So these local and community outlets, you know, are within your legislators' district, and they're paying really close attention to those because those are where their voter block is. So again, we're going to pick on poor Bo here, but, you know, he's going to be reading Chattanooga Times Free Press, or, you know, if there's a little paper out of Hickson, he's going to be paying attention to that. You know, those folks are truly what are keeping him in his role. So, you know, he's going to pay special attention to those sorts of things. So real quick, I wanted to just briefly talk about some of the folks that you may want to consider following when it comes to opinion and engagements for like that. You've got at the Tennessean, David Plazas, who is the head of he's the opinion and engagement editor at the Tennessean, and also Alex Hubbard, who is his assistant. And Alex will be giving us some tips here in a minute, but you may see, you may remember Eric from previously. Some of these folks have some smaller staff, so they wear a couple of hats. So Eric covers the State House, but then will also oversee some of the opinion pages for the Tennessee Journal. And then we've got the Tennessee Lookout, which is actually a relatively new publication, but it's getting a lot of traction. They pulled some reporters from the Tennessean, from the Daily Memphin, from a lot of different really esteemed organizations around the state to help get this organization off the ground. And it's been doing well and getting a lot of traction. So again, this is why this is important, you know, to pay attention to what is in these opinion pages. We're going to pick on our speaker, Representative Cameron Sexton. So he's obviously reading the Tennessean as well, but he's going to be paying special attention to newspapers like the Crossville Chronicle or the Herald Citizen, because his district is in 25. And so these folks here are going to be, you know, those are his voters. Those are his constituents. Those are his people. So he wants to know what they're thinking. So, you know, this is the sort of community papers that are even, you know, are very open to hearing the voices of their folks that live in those areas. So same thing on the Senate side. You know, we'll pick on Rusty Crowe. You know, he's Courtney's senator. And, you know, there's a few small community papers that are there. There's Johnson City Press and Herald Tribune and Jonesboro and the Elizabethton Star all have opinion pages. So if you see those community papers, you know, and you've got something to say, you should really, really reach out to them. Real quick, I wanted to circle back to Alex Hubbard. Alex is the assistant opinion editor and a regular columnist at the Tennessean. Works under David Plazas. Met Alex a couple times. He's a wonderful person to work with and to engage with. He's got a bachelor's of journalism from MTSU, or Middle Tennessee State University, and he actually has a master's degree from Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism in New York City. So he's a super smart guy, and I reached out to him the other day, asked if he could give us some tips from the editor's side. You know, what's it like when people send things in, and how could we maybe make them a little better? So here's what our friend Alex had to say about that.
There are two main avenues to deliver opinions in a local newspaper or similar publication: the letter to the editor and the op-ed, sometimes called the guest editorial or guest column. The letter to the editor is typically pretty short and can be likened to the metaphorical soapbox. The op-ed, on the other hand, is the place for thoughtful, reasoned, researched points of view. They are longer. At the Tennessean, we ask that letters top out at 250 words, while the op-ed can go up to 650 words. If there is one thing I could tell people who would like to place an op-ed in a newspaper, it would be, do not make the editor's job harder. Make your points clear, rigorous, fact-checked, and accurate. Supply sources that back up what you say. To the extent that you can, proofread what you write and make sure grammar and punctuation won't take the editor a lot of time to fix. Don't be cute when you write. Unless your overall point is humorous, it's best not to try to communicate things to an audience who doesn't know you well or what to expect from you and may not understand what you mean. At the same time, don't be too fancy. I usually tell people to pretend you are writing a letter to a friend about something important to you, but assume the friend doesn't know everything about what you are talking about. Despite what people think about writing, most people end up blowing right through the word count instead of coming up short. 650 words is really not very many words. Try very hard not to come to an editor and say something like, I can't make this any shorter without ruining what I said. You can make it shorter, and you will want to do it yourself, because if the editor has to shorten it, you may not like what they choose to cut. Remember that we receive more submissions than we have time, staff, or space to run. If you can, give us plenty of time to run your piece. For example, if it is tied to a specific month or an event. If it is more timely, make that clear in your email. Feel free to follow up if you don't get a response within a reasonable amount of time, but don't be demanding. Many writers, myself included, think what we have to say should be the priority. But there's a lot going on in the world and only so much time. Opinion writing is a lot of fun and very fulfilling. We're here to help you communicate your ideas as clearly as possible.
All right. Well, many thanks to our friend Alex there for sharing some pretty, I thought, insightful tips there. And I even told him, I said, you know, those are some tips that even a communications guy like me could is definitely worth remembering. So very, very grateful to Alex. He's a great guy to engage with, and is always very understanding, and he's just a great guy overall. So be sure to give him a follow if you have not. Wanted to also touch on disability advocates as far as individuals and organizations are concerned, because there's a lot of folks, there's a lot of conversations that are happening that, you know, you can get on board with, or find out more about other issues that are happening in our community. Some great folks to follow as far as organizations go are us, if you are not already. Disability Rights Tennessee is a wonderful organization here, as well as Tennessee Justice Center. They advocate for lots of different folks, including folks with disabilities. And I know Courtney's got some great suggestions too, and we'll circle to those here shortly. You know, great individual advocates to follow. Judy Heumann, who's probably the foremost disability rights icon in the world, if not at least the United States. Andrew Polrang, super smart guy, writes a lot of great and thought-provoking pieces in Forbes. Maria Rabeno, who was Courtney's suggestion. She is engaged with an organization called Be Boundless and the Rolettes, and as well as Melissa Thompson, who runs an organization called Ramp Your Voice, and Alice Wong, who's also a huge disability rights advocate, runs an organization called the Disability Visibility Project. And these folks are often sharing information on their social medias about relevant conversations, about some of the hashtags that we talked about. And this is a great place to find out sort of where the biggest issues are that are affecting our community. And, you know, there's more to disability, obviously, than sort of, you know, what we normally think of. I mean, a lot of diagnoses specific organizations are out there that are going to provide you maybe with a little more pointed resources and information that may be more specific to a diagnosis, but also worth following. In Autism TN, the ALS Association, American Liver, JDRF, which now advocates for all people with type 1, not just children. Empower Tennessee has amazing resources on sort of independent living and the independent living philosophy. And the same is true for hashtags. You know, I know that Sarah and China, I believe, talked about some hashtags earlier and kind of what goes into making a good hashtag. There's a lot of great hashtags to follow. You will see these amazing, you know, you click on one of these hashtags and just the conversations that are being had around any of these issues are really fascinating to figure out, so to find out more about. So special plug to our hashtags for this year. Let's Go Further TN and a hashtag DDH 2021. So if you participated in this, we'd love to have you post something like that. And if you tag us in it or use our hashtags, we will share it from our platform as well to get it spread even further. Courtney, when you and I were kind of chatting about this issue the other day, you had some really, really kind of great insights about, you know, people that you like to follow and why you like to follow them. Do you mind you want to kind of talking us through that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you asked. I have a few tips for sure. The biggest thing is try to find organizations formed by people with disabilities. You may have heard the phrase, "nothing about us without us." It's so important when it comes to disability rights. Our perspectives are different. The way we see things aren't from the same point of view as people who don't have disabilities. Often, people can talk about us as if we're not even in the room, let alone at the table. Some of my favorite groups are the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, the National Council on Independent Living, Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered, Rooted in Rights, and Communication First. Another big thing is to look for accounts and hashtags that are created by people with disabilities. It gives you more of an insider's perspective. You're not looking at it from a third person's point of view that way. You're seeing firsthand lived experiences of people with disabilities. The content and tone also differs significantly. Lolo Spencer is a great person to follow, as she's well known on Instagram and also has ALS. Micah Fowler is another person to follow. He's the actor on Speechless and has cerebral palsy in real life as well. As for the hashtags, here is an excellent example. The Actually Autistic hashtag was developed by autistic people. Meanwhile, the autism hashtag is used primarily by neurotypical people. The autism hashtag tends to focus on the negatives of autism, often using words like tragedy and fighting for a cure. Some even suggest dangerous things like giving bleach to kids. However, I've found the Actually Autistic hashtag is typically quite supportive and positive. You'll see a lot of autistic people celebrating things like happy stemming or small victories of the day, or even asking for advice on things like sensory issues or social difficulties they might be having, and the community offers support. Overall, It's important to make sure we're amplifying the voices of people with disabilities when we follow social media, and especially when advocating. Even though I have multiple disabilities myself, including the autism, being hard of hearing, the traumatic brain injuries, and being a wheelchair user, and some others as well, there are some disabilities I'm not as familiar with. And that means I need to make sure I'm learning to be a good advocate for people with all disabilities. Part of that is making sure I follow people who live with those disabilities.
Beautifully put, my friend, and cannot thank you enough for, just putting that first world and, perspective on some of these things. And I cannot thank everybody, all of our speakers enough. I know we're about to lose our interpreters because we're running a little long. So thank you, Elena and Karen, and thank you everybody who joined us today. We'll be in touch. This will be available recorded online with a transcription, so that will be available as well. So we'll post about that. But thank you so much. Do not forget about our event on March 11th at noon with our town hall with our legislators. And for the very latest information and greatest, we got you got your toolkits. If you haven't already registered for our town hall that I just talked about on March 11th, please do that. It's not too late to schedule with your legislators. We can try to get you an appointment with them. And for the very latest, make sure that you text further to 72690. I know that number is a little, can be tough to recall, but just remember that it is the anniversary of the ADA, or July 26, 1990. So 72690, text further to 72690, and then we'll try to use that to keep you abreast of everything that's happening at the legislature for sort of breaking policy stuff. And yeah, let's go further.
Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.